We've got bells ringing our end, everybody. It's 6 o'clock.
Bells.
You know, that's a terrible memory I've just come up with, which is the bells, the bells, the bells. And maybe I shouldn't start with this, but it was an opening line for me in The Roses of Eyam many moons ago when I played the Bedlam, who saw that the Black Plague was coming, but nobody else saw it. And he was ringing the bells to warn the whole village that the Black Plague, and I had to play the character. It's a bit prophetic, wasn't it?
Be traumatizing our community
by telling them that I played a mad boy in The Roses of Eyam. I've got a very nice photo of me somewhere with mud all over me. And then, of course, 10 years later, I was mad. So there you go. So it was a bit of a prophetic vision.
Very Halloween appropriate.
It is very Halloween appropriate. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Our little stories at the beginning. We like to tell a few stories.
You love a story. You love a story.
Lighten it up. But actually tonight, what we're talking about is thriving. Because actually the group being called Trauma Thrivers, we thought talking about thriving might be a good idea. So what does thriving mean to you, our group, and also to Mel? And what is thriving? I know that we've talked a little bit about it a couple of weeks ago, but just to reiterate, trauma thriving, really.
Absolutely. Well, and also just to say to everybody that's listening to us this evening and watching us this evening, if you're there, sometimes Lou and I tend to feel that we're a bit alone here. So please say hello. Just hit the like button or the heart button or send us hugs or waves or put some comments in. We want this to be interactive, and we want to know that, I mean, as much as I love talking to you, Lou, it's nice to know that there's other people that we're talking to as well.
Yeah, well, we are doing it for a reason, really, at the end of the day, aren't we?
Kind of. Yeah. I'd like to think so. Yeah. I'd like to think so. But I think this evening is really talking about, and I know this is a word that we've kind of coined, is about thrivability.
Yes.
Right? What is thrivability? What elements does it take to truly thrive? Because, we've talked about the difference between surviving and thriving a couple of weeks ago. If you haven't watched that, go back and watch it and let us know what you think of that one. So I think this evening is really, it's kind of more about what are the real key elements that it takes to thrive and to have thrivability. And I think we've sort of, come up with these 6 V's, haven't we? Which we believe are the elements to thriving. So why don't you tell us what they are, Lou?
Well, the 6 V's from my point of view are, I'm going to do them in the order that they came to me in, because then maybe I can personalize it a bit. Otherwise it feels a bit dry. So the first V for me, and I know it's not your first V, Mel, but it was for me, is vision. And it doesn't necessarily always come at the beginning of the journey for everybody, but for me, I had to have a reason. I had to have a good enough reason to do the work on myself to get me through and over the trauma. And so having a vision or a mission or a purpose or a reason behind it was really, really kind of vital. It was my first step, if you like. And then the next step was trying to put down the vices. And I say trying and I laugh, because some vices get put down more easily than other vices, and although it took me many and numerous attempts with alcohol, I think the hardest things for me to put down were nicotine and smoking. And then I actually found it really hard to put down nicotine gum. So I've, and food was always a comforter and a comfort blanket. And I think that if we want to truly thrive, we can't really be using substances or behaviors or vices, because we can't step into that thriving space, really. So those are two. For me, it was about vision and being free of vices. The next one for me was about this self-validation, and about finding my validation or my codependency and esteem coming from everybody else, coming from outside of me, coming from other people or how they looked at me, and not having any sense of my own self-validation. And that took a while. And then for me also, a real important point of thriving and being a trauma thriver is our ability to find our voice. You know, and find our voice firstly by being able to say no, by being able to put in boundaries, by just speaking and speaking our mind and speaking out. And then secondly, for me, finding a voice was about being able to tell my story, being able to speak on a stage, being able to speak in a meeting, being able to speak in a room full of people, being able to speak in a TEDx, you know, which 10 years ago would have been absolutely impossible. So I think if you don't have a voice, it's really difficult to thrive. And the same is very true with being visible. So I don't know about you, Mel, but I had a problem with putting myself out there, in doing videos, in doing stuff like Facebook Lives, in even showing up on any way in social media, or taking a step into the limelight in any way, you know, and being maybe judged or looked at or criticized, or, you know, thinking that internal dialogue as it does. You know, my old chestnut, what was, and I've shared this with you before, was too old, too fat and too ugly, you know, to put myself out there. So not being visible, how can you really thrive if you're not visible? And the last one for me was about valuing myself, was really about value and self-worth. And in the old days, you know, I couldn't ever charge. I couldn't really earn any money. I didn't value my time at all. I gave it away. In fact, I gave most things away because my self-worth was so low that until I could kind of upscale how much I valued myself and my inner self-worth, how could I become a thriver? And so all of those things, to me, those paths, they're not that you do, you know, one on their own. They're kind of consecutive spirals on the journey of being able to do all of those things so that we can really truly flourish and be ourselves and step into ourselves, because, you know, who we're meant to be thrivers.
Absolutely. And I think that's, you know, the really important thing to remember is that we are all different. And I know I say this often, but, you know, there might be areas, and I know we've had lots of discussions about this, Lou, areas which you are already thriving. And it might be that there's some things that just innately come naturally to you.
Like you. Like, you know, I always say to you, my God, how the hell have you been able to just find your voice? Because, you know, for finding my voice for me, bloody hell, I had to do course upon course upon course. I had to stand when I was trying to do public speaking and go through so much training. And so I think it was about 2 years before I could stand on a stage. So I really struggled with voice, where your voice kind of comes to you naturally. It's not been as difficult, that part, I think.
I think in some ways yes, and in some ways no. For me, I think, you know, I disclosed about my sexual abuse when I was 13, which in a lot of respects is actually quite young. You know, a lot of clients that we see have never disclosed. You know, we're seeing people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s that, you know, the first time they've ever disclosed about their childhood trauma is when they speak to us. So although it kind of took me 13 years because, you know, the trauma started pre-verbal, I still think I was quite young by a lot of standards, to have been able to find my voice and tell my story at that point. And I think in some respects, finding my voice has come easy to me. I think especially in terms of, being able to tell my story, being able to, you know, do the social media stuff. And I think that's probably more in the terms of visible, where I've kind of thrived quite easily. But where I've struggled to find my voice, Lou, and this has really only been a fairly recent thing, is the other side of it, which is the setting the boundaries. Being able to kind of ask for my needs to be met, the being able to say no when I need to. So it's been, you know, it's still been a journey for me in that respect. And actually, I remember for many years, and I don't know if this is a result of, you know, what happened after I disclosed about my trauma, because everything kind of blew up, and more trauma ensued. But actually, I think that I lost my voice a little bit after that as well. And I remember for many, many years, I couldn't listen to myself. Like if I heard my voice somewhere, I would cringe. And actually, it wasn't until I did my yoga teacher training, which was about 6 or 7 years ago now, that I found it again. And I started to be able to use my voice publicly again. So it's taken, you know, that it's been a journey for me with my voice as well, I think. But I think for me, the visible has been the easier one. And I think that sort of goes back to, you know, being on the stage when I was younger, and the performing. And I've always found that very easy. I've never been one to shy away from the limelight. Let's put it that way.
Well, you know, that's helpful in a way, isn't it? And I'm sure lots of people that are listening, you know, do find that even being on a Facebook Live or commenting underneath or putting themselves out there in any way is a bit tricky still. And, you know, it's not that it's not tricky for therapists either, because I think, you know, we can disclose our trauma in a safe environment, and then we can disclose to a therapist, or we can share our story. But I also think we kind of have to do it in degrees, because we need to certainly, when we're telling it from a stage, I always say we need to kind of have done enough work on the story that we're speaking from the scar and not the wound, you know. So for me, it was definitely steps, and, you know, it was definitely small parts of the story and elements of it, bit by bit by bit by bit, you know. And I'd never probably have been able to stand up and tell all the trauma story, even up to 5 years ago for me. So I don't want anybody to feel that's watching this, oh my God, I haven't shared my story, or I'm not there yet, because almost for me, and I know that you know, you blasted it young, but almost for me, a lot of people I work with, is getting them ready to share their story, or to say their story, or to report, or to do something about it. And actually, that often isn't the first step, is it? It's often, you know,
definitely not. And I think, you know, in terms of, I know that you went through that list in how it happened for you, but and we talked about this before. I struggle actually to know whether the vices or the vision came first for me, because I know that definitely, because of how deep in my addiction I was, that had to be really the first journey that I went on, the first element that I addressed, because I was using so much and drinking so much that there wouldn't have been any possibility for any other work to have been done
unless you put down. But you must have kind of had some sort of good enough reason, or some moving away of pain and towards pleasure. There must be a crunch point for us to want to put down, you know, the vices.
Yeah, and I think for me there must have been that vision there. There was definitely, in fact, I know there was a sense of purpose that came to me. And when that sense of purpose came to me, and, you know, for me, that was, my sense of purpose was that I wanted to live, was that I wanted to help people, was that I wanted to use the pain and the suffering that I'd been through to shine a light on other people's pain and suffering. And once I knew that, once I had that purpose and that vision, I was able to put the vices down. That was part of
okay, so you did have the vision first.
So I think I probably did.
Yeah.
Although it wasn't clear how I was going to do it, or how I was going to achieve those things, or exactly what the goals were. There was definitely a sense of purpose and a vision that it had to be better.
And sometimes it's like that spiritual moment, isn't it? Or a soulful moment of having a glimpse of who we could become without the vices. Mm-hmm. You know, and some of you listening to this might not have deep addictions, or might not be really using food, or really in that self-defeating, self-destructive cycle. You know, and I think we can self-destruct and self-defeat and do all of that lack of self-care or compassion in lots of ways. It doesn't just have to be drugs or alcohol, or you know, me smoking 60 fags a day, well, maybe 40 to be fair. You know, it can be how we are with exercise, it can be how we are with work, it can be that we don't give ourselves any time off, that we don't really look after ourselves in some way. You know, all of that is vices, really. Even codependency in some way is a vice, because we're putting everybody else first instead of ourselves. So I think it's about any self-defeating habit really becomes a vice, and it also becomes a blocker for us ever being who we really are.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we cannot connect to our authentic selves when we're avoiding and dissociating, which is what the vices do.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I wanted to bring up in this chat today is about the limiting beliefs, because I think, you know, what are limiting beliefs, and what limiting beliefs underpin these things that stop us from getting to these places, from getting to our vision, from getting to being able to validate ourselves.
Well, if you put the 6 V's separately, how it works in my head, or how I do it through both my own trauma journey and also people that I work with, is I think that it's really important to do the self thing. So I think it's really important to do the self-care, the self-compassion. I think it's really important to do the self-belief. I think it's really important to raise our self-esteem. I think it's really important to look at self-worth. I think it's really vital to be able to self-express. So all those self-caring, belief, esteem, worth, expression are, to me, the opposite of the limiting belief. So if we take each of the V's separately, and some of them cross over, you know, some of them cross over, but some of them are kind of independent. You know, the validating by others, what do we think that a limiting belief would be within our child self if we constantly had to be validated by others, if we were looking for approval constantly by others? It's kind of I'm unlovable, or I don't matter, or I'm insignificant. I kind of need you to give me that sense of significance. And we know where it comes from. It comes from a lack of mirroring early on, and an attachment neglect, that we need other people. And we do need other people. We are neurobiological beings. We do well in safe relationships. But when it comes to thriving, we've got to get to the place of validating ourselves.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think with the valuable, I think value is all about self-worth and feeling unworthy and feeling lacking in value in some way. So I think the belief early on is, you know, I don't deserve it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm unworthy. I can't get it for myself. I think the voice is something about, you know, the self-expression. We're taught so early on that we're not allowed to express ourselves, you know, shh, be quiet, who's making a noise? And so, you know, that being heard or having a voice often gets kind of stuck in our throat or traumatized. You know, I can't speak out, or I can't find my voice, or if I do, I'm going to be rejected, or what I've got to say isn't important.
Yeah, I'm going to be shushed.
Right? Yeah, that's awful. You know, and I'm not just going to be shushed for my voice. I'm not able to speak out about how I really feel.
Yeah.
So I can't share my emotions. I can't say what's going on for me. I've just got to kind of hold it all in. So our internal and external voice all gets repressed, you know, and I can't tell you the amount of people that get it stuck in their throat.
Yeah.
You know, they can't speak because they think they're going to get into terrible trouble. You know, that was me. So I think voice is that. I think vision is I'm stuck. I don't have any belief to be able to go towards my goals. I don't know what I want. I don't know where I'm going. I'm incapable of getting there anyway. I don't have what it takes.
I don't trust myself, I think,
yeah.
is one for vision. Because, you know, I think I remember having, you know, people used to say to me, you know, all the gear, no idea. But I had the ideas.
Yes.
And I had all this stuff in my head, and I would start things. I would always, my mum used to say this to me all the time, you know, Melanie, you always start things and you never finish them.
Yeah.
Because I would start something and then I'd think, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe this is the wrong thing. And I would start to question it and not trust myself, not trust what initially I believed in. Suddenly it's like that imposter syndrome, isn't it?
Yeah.
It kicked in.
Yeah. And it kicks in because underneath all of this, underneath the inability to validate ourselves or have a voice or have a vision or feel valuable or validate ourselves or be visible, are all these limiting beliefs in our child part going, you're not going to be able to make it. You're not going to be able to do it. You can't do it. So we're stuck, unable to thrive because we think, part of us thinks all these terrible things about ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, and like people are going to discover it and I'm going to get found out and they're going to, you know, I'm never going to make it and I'll be rejected and abandoned. And then here we are again, stuck, not able to move forwards, you know, in that procrastinating, putting off, you know, it's endless. I did it for years, you know, and I think sometimes it's helpful to know that, you know, I'm unlovable to I'm lovable. I don't matter to I matter. I'm insignificant or worthless to I'm worthy. You know, they're not overnight jobs.
No.
But once you've identified that it's the beliefs that are blocking you, I love looking at it as the all or nothings or the black or white. So let's say that the child believes this. What blocks us is that part of us that I call the critical parent, or we call the adapted self, because the wounded self is the child. The adapted self is the kind of critical parent that carries on that dialogue. Oh, don't do it. Oh, no, don't put yourself out there. Oh, don't say that. Oh, is constantly blocking because it's protecting the child.
Yeah.
It doesn't want us to feel re-shamed, re-humiliated, re-whatever. It's going, no, don't do it. Don't do it, because this is going to happen.
Yeah.
So somehow in the middle of both those all or nothings, or blacks or whites, we've got to find the middle ground, which is our true, real adult self.
The nurturing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the thing to point out here is that adapted self, and I just call her my teenager, because you know, she can get very stubborn, and
so can a critical parent, I tell you. Yeah.
It was actually kept me safe.
Yeah.
For a really, really long time, served a purpose.
Yeah, their job is there to help you.
Yeah, and what I had to learn in my healing journey was to be able to say to that part of myself, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for trying to keep me safe. But the adult's here now.
Yeah.
The grown-up's here.
Yeah.
The grown-up is going to start taking care of things. Yeah. And you can still be here and you're still welcome. But we're going to start doing things a little bit differently.
Yeah. And that's exactly the process, isn't it, of going from surviving to thriving, is trying to really self-care and value and esteem those parts of us that have been hidden or ostracized or put down or shamed, and try and bring them out of the cupboard, if you like, and start talking to them and engaging with them again and having a dialogue. And at the same time, that stroppy teenager or critical parent, or whatever we want to call it, the adapted self, knowing that it's trying to do its best for us, but in a really old, archaic way. And it might have worked 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, but it's not working for you now.
Yeah. And it's really important to point out here, as Lou said before, you know, it's a process.
Yeah.
You know, these beliefs, these limiting beliefs, they need to be recognized, they need to be understood, they need to be metabolized.
Yeah.
And it's a process. You know, I wish we could just, you know, give our clients some magic formula that they go to bed one night and then they wake up in the morning. I mean, we'd be out of business, but
that's great. Put me out of business.
I would rather
let everybody thrive.
Find a new career.
Yeah.
That, you know, you could just go to bed one night and wake up in the morning and it was all magically gone.
Yeah.
You know, it was all magically changed, but it's a process. And actually, sometimes it can be a really beautiful process, because I think, you know, for me, it was where I got to really know myself and understand myself and start to love myself.
It's an unfolding and it's a development, and it's going from self-hate and self-negation and self-loathing, which is sometimes what our child parts unfortunately believe about themselves, and then the adapted or the teenager compounds that, to going into the middle of both of those polarities and going, okay, how do I start to, you know, because I think we joked about this a while ago, you know, you're not going to go from earning a minimum wage, and I hate to use money as a standpoint or a kind of measure, but sometimes it's quite a good measure. So, you know, we're not going to go from charging £10 an hour or 20 to 2,000. You know, and there's some things that we can't charge 2,000 for anyway, but, you know, we're not suddenly going to go from 0 to 100. It is a process, as you say, of somewhere in the middle, starting to hear a more reasoned, adult, slightly kinder voice, because self-loathing doesn't go to self-love. You know, what's the opposite of self-worth? None. No self-worth at all to high self-worth doesn't happen. No self-care or compassion to high self-care and compassion. It doesn't just happen, but it's a process of balancing those very opposing forces within us and starting to see there's nothing wrong with them. There never was. It was just what they were taught and told when they were growing up. And, you know, I, for one, and I'm sure you're the same, if anybody wants to use this community to be more visible, or to, if it's appropriate posting, put your voice out here if it's helpful. Use the community, share, get involved. You know, Mel and I, we're delighted to help you step into your thriving, because God, it took me a hell of a long time. So if I can help anybody else along the way, we'd love to do that.
And knowing that this is a safe space to do that, you know, it's a private group, no one outside it can see what's going on, no one knows that you're here, it's just us, and it's a really safe place. And I kind of wish that maybe we had more of this when I was going through, you know, the first stages of my healing. You know, social media wasn't a thing, you know, it wasn't, you couldn't engage with community in quite the same way.
And even though, you know, social media has its drawbacks in that, you know, the validation and the self-validation and being validated, you know, as you scroll through Instagram, you know, even sometimes at my ripe old age, I can find myself going, oh, wow, I don't know whether this is, you know, improving my mood any, you know, and it can do that. But I think I can't remember what point I was going to say. Sorry, too much work today.
A senior moment, Lou.
Yeah, I'm having a senior menopause moment. Yeah, there you go. There, we all have them, Mel. You're far too young to know what they're like. Yeah.
Exactly. You were talking about social media, the need to validate.
Oh yeah, I was talking about the benefits of it. You know, so I think the benefits of it, thank you, are about being visible and about practicing and putting yourself out there little bit by little bit. So I do think, you know, it has its drawbacks like most things, but it's also got its pluses.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So before we sign off for this evening, ce soir, I want to ask you, Lou, are there any of those 6 V's that you still find challenging? And if so, how do you deal with them now? I like putting you on the spot.
That's all right. I don't mind being put on the spot at all. And I also don't mind saying to people that I think it's a continuous journey. And I think my vision and value and voice adapt each year. And they probably will do, please God, for the next 10 or 20 or however long I'm on the planet. So yeah, I think it's I wouldn't say that I'm 100% of all of it yet, but maybe at 80. I mean, there's some things that trigger me still in certain situations, finding my voice, you know, with certain people, or, you know, I don't know how I would feel, I don't know, standing up in the Houses of Parliament with a full room and a full audience. Still, I think that would slightly unnerve me. But
for it, Lou.
Huh?
I think you should prepare yourself for it.
Well, I think if we want to raise the flag and fly the flag even of making mental health provision and trauma treatment available to the masses and not only to the selective few, it might be a campaign, Mel, at some point that we're going to have to get involved in, because, you know, I, for one, as you are, am passionate about someday making something more affordable for those that can't afford it. So yes. But
I was thinking more about when you get knighted. Or do you get
I don't think I have that in my vision at all. Bless. But yeah, I think I'll have to do a few more good deeds before we get to that. Yeah. I definitely think that, you know, the valuable and the voice we're still learning, and also that self-validation. You know, your critical parent, or the internal dialogue, or the superego, or the adapted, it never totally disappears, you know, and mine hasn't either. So I just want to be totally upfront and honest about it. It reduces, it reduces, it reduces, it reduces. And in a way, until you go to kind of, you know, one consciousness, and there's just one of you, and there's no duality whatsoever, and no ego left, which, you know, is possible. I think those voices are always going to be there in a way. Just checking. Oh, you sure you really want to do this? Oh, is that a good idea to say that? Oh, you know, don't be too shamed about being menopausal on your Facebook Live, where you completely lose your train of thought halfway through. You know, I mean, if that had been 10 years ago, maybe 5, that would I'd have coloured at that. Oh, I'm live to my Facebook group, and I'm losing the plot here, everyone. You know, it's all right. We don't have to be perfect.
Oh, I love
What
that.
about you?
I think the same, really. For me, as you know, the last few weeks I've kind of, you know, been going through a relationship breakup, and that has really where I've found it challenging is the validation.
Yeah.
Because my inner critic starts to come in, you know, and I think that's the thing that happens, right? Life events don't stop happening. You know, I say this all the time. When we get to a certain point in our healing process, we don't suddenly wake up farting unicorns. Like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what does happen is, for me, you know, when the life events happen, first of all, for me, the miracle is I don't go to a drink or a drug.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
yeah.
the miracle.
Yeah.
Right? The miracle is I don't revert back to the vices. But there is an ability to get in touch with and engage with the nurturing adult faster and a lot easier, and to do the processing, and to know, and I think this is the really important part for me, to know that the pain is a gift, and that if I can stick with the pain, if I can sit with the uncomfortable feelings, if I am brave enough to do the processing, then there's another layer of trauma that's been shifted.
Yeah.
And there's another level of freedom that happens as a result of it.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of it is faith and belief. And sometimes some of it's just clinging on for dear life. And having wonderful people like you to help me through it.
Bless you. Bless you. You know, what came up for me just then is that shit still happens, but it smells sweeter.
I love that. Brilliant analogy.
Yeah. So my woman with the dog that got narky with me this week, Mel, the story I told you, who screamed and shouted and got very upset, and the dog wasn't whittling. 5 years ago, that would have really jostled me. 10 years ago, I'd have probably burst into tears. This time, I'm not having any of it, love. You know, there's a boundary that can go in, and it falls off a lot more. So I think that's what we get, isn't it, if we keep doing the work.
Yeah, I think at the crux of it is the shame reduction.
Yeah.
The shame reduction.
Yeah. And not having anybody else projecting their stuff onto you, which is lovely.
Tell him to foxtrot Oscar, Lou.
Yeah, telling him to foxtrot Oscar, unless it's lovely stuff, which you just said. So then we'll let all of that in. Yeah. But we want to know what you guys think, and what's helpful for you, and where you are at on the continuum, and if any of the V's resonated with you, and if they did, what you think about them, and what comes up for you, or what's missing, or your thoughts around it. Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
We'd love that. We want to hear from you guys. That's why we do this stuff.
Yeah. So let us know. I know that we'll get our stalwarts and the people that are here every week that we love coming back and watching. And yeah, and we will be interviewing more people. It won't just eternally be the Me and Mel show, although we hope you like it when it's just us two having a little chat. And
I know you should ask that question, Lou.
Yeah, well, maybe not.
I might fall back into my not being able to validate myself.
Yeah. Validated by the group. Oh, God. Oh, but in the meantime, we're trying to keep them a bit short and sweet and less than 45 minutes, so you don't look at it and go, oh my God, that's going to take up all the day if I watch that. And any questions, come back to us, let us know in the group. And we're back next week, but we have got somebody. We do. And next week, so from this week on, tonight we've kind of done a little bit of an overview of the V's, the 6 elements to Thrivability. And from next week, we're going to be exploring each of those 6 V's with an expert. Not that we're not experts, but with other experts. Yeah. In a little bit more detail. Yeah. So just keep an eye on the Facebook group to see what's coming up next. And if anybody actually is an expert in one of those V's or thinks that they are an expert, they're very welcome to get in touch, aren't they? Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. Please do. Yeah. We love that our group is half clinicians really and half thrivers. So it's a really brilliant mixture. We've got you all in here. But yet I know that even us clinicians, even us, sometimes we have a problem finding our voice and putting ourselves out there. So this could be relevant to you. Absolutely. Absolutely. In the meantime, lots of love and have a good week. Thanks, Mel. Take care, everyone. And we'll see you soon. And let us know what you think in the comments. Bye for now. Bye. Bye.